If you look at the demographic makeup of Malaysia today, you'll find a massive community that makes up 7% of the nation's entire population. In fact, Malaysian Indians form the fifth largest group of overseas Indians anywhere in the world. Standard historical accounts usually start the clock for this population in the 19th or 20th century, pointing directly to British colonial labor policies. It is true that hundreds of thousands of Tamil, Telugu, and Malayali laborers were brought over by the British. Operating under the indentured Kangeni system, they cleared the land, built the railways, and spent their days tapping rubber trees to feed the machinery of the empire. But focusing solely on the 1800s creates a massive historical blind spot. It erases over 1,000 years of transoceanic migration that occurred long before European arrival. Treating this diaspora strictly as a byproduct of British rule ignores their role as foundational architects of Southeast Asia, with an influence spanning 2 millennia. The true first wave of Indian migration began over 1,700 years ago. Driven by trade and religious missions, explorers and merchants from ancient India navigated across the Bay of Bengal to the Malay Peninsula. They established early societies known as Indianized kingdoms. Places like Ganganagara and Old Kedah integrated Hindu-Buddhist traditions, leaving behind a physical footprint of ancient stone ruins centuries before the first European ships appeared on the horizon. This steady contact was backed by the naval and merchant power of the Pallava and Chola dynasties, who controlled the primary trade routes of the Indian Ocean. By the 11th century, that influence turned into direct political expansion. King Rajendra Chola I sent massive naval expeditions to conquer territories and establish deep ties with the powerful Srivijaya Empire. By the time the Portuguese and British arrived, they weren't creating new markets. They were stepping into a highly structured maritime corridor built by Indian empires long before the colonial era. The interaction between these regions wove Indian social and political systems into the early Malay world. Proof of this integration exists in ancient Kedah, where archaeologists discovered 4th century stone inscriptions written in Sanskrit using the Pallava Grantha script of southern India. We can see the depth of this influence in the Malay language itself. Tamil served as the language of commerce for centuries. The Tamil word for ship, kapal, became the Malay kapal. The Tamil word for shop, kedai, became the Malay kedai. This extended to folklore as well. Early Malay literature and shadow puppet theater absorbed mythological characters and stories from the major Indian epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Eventually, European colonizers arrived and built their own systems on top of this bedrock. They shifted the demographic focus, recruiting Sikhs and Punjabis to serve in colonial police forces and civil administration. The most visible parts of modern Malaysian culture, from everyday language to traditional theater, are the results of a 2,000-year-old migration. Today, the Malaysian Indian community exists as a complex socio-economic tapestry, characterized by a sharp divide between elite professionals and low-income laborers. The disparity is stark. Historically, Malaysian Indians made up a high percentage of the nation's medical and legal professionals, reaching 38% of the medical workforce by 1984. Yet today, roughly 40% of the community is in the B40 category, the lowest rung of the national income ladder. These challenges are compounded by institutional policies, like the NEP, which favor the ethnic Malay majority. This has led to decades of socio-political friction and visible civil protests against racial discrimination. Even with these systemic obstacles and a declining share of the population, the cultural presence of the community remains massive and monumental. Nowhere is this more obvious than at Batu Caves, Stern Thaipusam. Every year, millions of people gather at this towering shrine of Lord Murugan, which stands over 42 meters high, to participate in one of the world's largest Hindu festivals. Devotees perform intense rites of penance, carrying the kavadi, a large decorated wooden arch, often using hooks and spikes pierced into the body as an act of faith. Whether observing a devotee at Batu Caves or speaking Malay in the streets of Kuala Lumpur, you are witnessing the current chapter of a 2,000-year transoceanic legacy.